Welcome to the Starlings One podcast. Once again, I'm Patrick. We're continuing with our science series this week with a little bit more disappointing study, I think is fair to say if you're a huge fan of prediction markets. This study from 2021 was published in the Royal Society for Open Science. We've got a link in the show notes. Basically, it's called Using Prediction Markets to Predict the Outcomes in DARPA's Next Generation Science program. Basically, DARPA is a research institute that is really tied to the U.S. military. I wouldn't necessarily give a huge amount of credence to that. It's basically a research institute. They're trying to figure out whether experts in the study, they're trying to figure out whether experts in social science could predict the reproducibility of social science studies based upon a few parameters within the context of a prediction market. And this was a registered report. This study was a registered report, which means that they registered what the methodology and the hypothesis and how they're going to carry out the experiment ahead of time with the journal before doing it, which means ostensibly there's less of a risk of any sort of reproducibility error in what their claims are. So it basic, but anyway, what they said was this is not reproducible, or rather there's not really a correlation between, they didn't say it's not reproducible. What they said was there is not a correlation between the usage of this, within the context of the usage of this prediction market, what the participants claimed would not reproduce or what would reproduce in terms of the study titles that they were evaluating, and whether the studies actually ended up reproducing or not. So basically, that's a long-winded way of saying there's these guesses that people are making about social science studies. They're just guesses, and they're not predictive of what the outcome will be. So that means that whereas last week we had a really excellent article that really demonstrates within the context of psychology journals that studies can be called out for being overly excited about what they're claiming. This particular study shows that, well, no, they really can't, or you can't necessarily do that in all contexts. So the two studies from last week and from this week contradict each other. Does that mean one is right and the other one's wrong? Not necessarily. Maybe it depends upon the context. Maybe it really depends upon if you're zeroing in on a particular science field versus a general set of social science field. Maybe it's hard. Maybe the experts that they used in the prediction market weren't the best. But I think it's important to cover this to show, again, there's an inherent possible weakness in prediction markets. The outcome or the output of what your prediction market is saying about a particular question might not be the most reliable about predicting things that will happen in the world, in the universe. And well, at least that's what this study shows. So again, it's important for us to talk about here. We're interested in forecasting overall, and prediction markets are just one part of that. But regardless, hope you enjoy listening to our AI overview of this study, and also, like I said, links below. Hope you enjoy. Oh, hey, and I almost forgot. Jump on over to starlings.one for more information. Check out all of our different socials, and you can also check out our completely open source and MIT licensed prediction market called Social Predict. If you just search Social Predict on GitHub or just Google or whatever way you want to find it online, you know how to find things. Just search Social Predict, prediction market. All right, great. Thanks. Enjoy the episode.
Predicting the future of science. Sounds kind of crazy.
Well, maybe not as crazy as you think.
That's what we're looking into today.
Yeah.
This research paper you send over, it talks about like using prediction markets
Right.
to forecast scientific outcomes.
Uh-huh.
I gotta say, I'm a little skeptical about this
I
one.
get it. It's a pretty wild concept, but stick with me.
Okay, you've got my attention. The paper focuses on DARPA's program,
That's right, the Next Generation Social Science program.
NGS2 for short.
Exactly.
And, well, this program is all about trying to understand complex social systems.
Yeah, some really complex stuff.
So how do these prediction markets even fit into all of this?
So the paper proposes using these markets to predict the results of experiments in the NGS2 program.
Whoa. Okay, so we're talking about trying to anticipate the actual results of experiments before they even happen.
You got it.
All right, hold on. I think we need to back up a little. What exactly are prediction markets? Can you break that down for us?
Okay, imagine you're betting on a sports game. Okay, I can do that.
But instead of betting on which team will win, you're betting on whether a scientific hypothesis will be proven true or not.
So it's kind of like the stock market, but for scientific ideas.
Exactly. People buy and sell contracts based on their belief in a particular outcome. And just like with stocks, the price goes up if more people believe in it.
So if everyone thinks a hypothesis is going to pan out, the price of the yes contract goes way up.
Exactly. And get this, prediction markets have actually been used pretty successfully in other areas already. Like, think about predicting election results.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Or even predicting the winner of, like, the Oscars or something like that.
And so they're saying, hey, this has worked for those things.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can apply it to science.
Right. Now, these researchers, they're specifically interested in 14 different hypotheses within the NGS2 program. And all these hypotheses, they all have to do with group innovation.
Ah, okay. So this is getting into how groups work together, especially in competitive environments, right? Right, exactly. Like how teams, even whole societies function.
Yeah.
Super relevant stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure. So to recap, we're talking about DARPA. They're doing this NGS2 program.
Mm-hmm.
They're studying group behavior, trying to understand how these social dynamics work.
And how to predict them.
And how to predict them using these prediction markets.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned they're using this to study 14 specific hypotheses, right?
Yep. And those hypotheses, they're not just retreading old ground. This is about predicting the outcomes of brand new experimental designs. Pretty cool, right?
Right. Okay. But is there any reason to believe that this is going to actually work?
Well, there's some promising evidence from past studies that have used prediction markets in science. These studies focused on whether findings from past experiments could be replicated.
Right.
And their predictions were accurate 73% of the time.
73%. That's actually pretty impressive. But those studies were all about replicating things that had already been done, right?
Yes, you're right.
This is like predicting something totally new seems way more difficult.
You're not wrong. This research is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible with prediction markets. No doubt about it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So walk us through this. How are they actually going to use these markets with these NGS2 experiments? Like, what's the game plan?
All right, so they're going to get at least 50 people,
Okay.
mostly researchers, and these folks are going to participate in this prediction market
Okay.
for about 2 weeks. And then, even before the market kicks off, they're going to ask these participants to predict individually whether each hypothesis will be supported and how big the effect will be.
So they get individual predictions first, and then they see what the market does.
Yeah, and then they compare both of those to the actual results. They're trying to see what's more accurate, individual guesses or the collective wisdom of the market.
Fascinating. It's like a showdown. Expert versus the crowd.
Exactly. But we have to remember there are some things to keep in mind.
Like what?
Well, they are only looking at 14 hypotheses.
Okay, that's not a lot.
It's a good start, but more research with bigger samples is definitely needed.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's still early days for this kind of research. But it sounds like they didn't just pull this idea out of nowhere, right? There are some precedents.
Right. They looked at 4 previous studies on prediction markets in science.
Okay.
And those studies had hundreds of participants, and they looked at different fields like psychology and economics. So it's not just coming out of the blue.
I got to say, the more we talk about this, the more I'm starting to see how this could be really powerful. Like, what if we could actually predict which scientific experiments are going to lead to big breakthroughs? That would be amazing.
I know, right? We could get so much more efficient. Allocate resources better, focus on areas that are likely to succeed. We could really accelerate progress in like medicine, energy, even space exploration.
It would be like having a roadmap for scientific discovery. But I do wonder, could knowing the future be a bad thing too?
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge question we need to think about. If we're always focusing on what's predictable, Are we going to stifle creativity and risk-taking? And those are things that are really important for scientific progress.
It's a tough balance, for sure. I'm really curious to hear more about the potential impacts of this research.
Yeah, me too.
Not just for the scientific process, but for society as a whole. Because this has the potential to change everything.
Absolutely. The implications are huge. We're talking about some fundamental questions about how we approach knowledge and discovery. It's pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, you've definitely sold me. I want to dive deeper into all of this.
Let's do it. Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
So much to unpack.
Yeah.
So we could be talking about fast-tracking discoveries.
Yeah. Like, think about
That could benefit humanity.
medicine or clean energy,
Totally.
even space exploration, who knows? But you're right, there's always another side to these things.
Right, like could knowing the future actually backfire and make things less creative, like less willing to take risks?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, science thrives on pushing boundaries, venturing into the unknown.
Exactly.
What if we just play it safe all the time? Only chasing the sure things.
Yeah, we might miss out on those totally unexpected discoveries that lead to huge leaps forward.
Exactly.
It's like a balancing act
Yes.
between efficiency, strategy,
Yeah.
but also like protecting that spirit of exploration
Right.
that makes science so amazing in the first place.
Totally. And it goes beyond just the science itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, think about the bigger picture, the impact on society.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine we can predict, say, certain technologies developing, like with super high certainty.
Okay.
We're talking AI, genetic engineering, things like that.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, knowing how those things might turn out,
Yeah.
that could trigger so much stuff, like policies, ethical debates,
All right.
maybe even anxieties that we're not ready for.
It's like a ripple effect, going way beyond just the labs and the research. It makes you wonder, like, are we ready for that?
Right, and that's what makes this research so much bigger than just predicting a few experiments.
Yeah.
We're talking about, like, the implications of trying to foresee the future of scientific discovery.
The whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah. It's kind of mind-blowing, really.
It really is. It's like that saying, the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Yeah.
But what if we can actually do both?
Whoa.
Create it and predict it.
Yeah, that's a real head-scratcher.
It's a paradox.
Makes you think, what will happen to human intuition, ingenuity,
Yeah.
in a world where we can see scientific outcomes coming?
Right. Like, what kind of scientists will we need then?
Totally.
So, okay, we've talked a lot about big picture stuff.
Yeah.
But let's get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
How do these markets actually work?
Sure.
Break it down for us non-economists.
All right, so it's actually pretty simple. Participants get some virtual money, right?
Right.
And they can buy and sell contracts that are linked to the outcome of each hypothesis.
Okay.
So if lots of people think a hypothesis is going to be right, the price of that contract goes up.
So it's kind of like betting on a horse race,
Yeah, exactly.
but with scientific ideas.
Right, exactly. And just like betting, there are risks and rewards.
Yeah.
Predict right, your virtual money grows. Predict wrong, you lose some.
Oh, so there are stakes.
Yeah, so people really got to think carefully
Okay.
and pay attention to new information.
So it's not just like throwing darts at a board.
Right, and you mentioned earlier there's the scoring rule.
Yeah, the logarithmic thing.
Yeah, so it gets a little technical, but basically it's a way to make sure the market stays lively
Okay.
and the prices reflect what people really think.
So it's like a quality control system,
Yeah, you could say that.
making sure people are being thoughtful,
Exactly.
not just random guessing.
And they're also comparing these market predictions with those initial surveys we talked about, remember?
Right, where people make individual predictions before the market even opens.
Yeah, so they can see if the group is smarter than any one expert.
Ooh, the wisdom of the crowd versus the lone wolf expert.
Exactly.
I also like that they're planning to make all their data and methods public.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Real transparency.
Yeah, especially with something like this, that could be so revolutionary. Transparency is super important.
Totally. Allows other researchers to double check everything, maybe try to replicate the findings.
Yeah, keep the conversation going.
It's part of this bigger trend in science, isn't it?
Definitely.
Towards more reproducibility, better statistics, more collaboration.
Yeah, people are recognizing that science is a human thing,
Yeah.
We have biases, we make mistakes.
We're not perfect.
Right, and sometimes even worse stuff happens.
Yeah.
But the more open we are, the
Yeah.
better we can catch those errors and build a stronger base of knowledge.
It's like shining a light on the whole process.
Exactly.
Makes it more accountable, more trustworthy. So we've explored all these different sides of prediction markets, their potential impact on science.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in. But I got to ask you again,
Okay.
and you listening out there, think about this too. Would you actually participate in a prediction market for science?
It's a great question, and it's a complicated one.
Yeah, lots to consider. Potential benefits, potential downsides.
It's a personal decision, for sure.
It really is a tough one.
It boils down to, your personal values, I guess.
Right. What do you think? If someone invited you to join one of these markets?
I think for me, it depends on how much trust I had in the system,
Okay, yeah.
Like if it felt fair, unbiased,
Right.
and transparent, really open about how everything works.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then I think I'd be pretty interested in trying it out.
Okay.
Seeing how my own predictions stack up against the crowd.
Yeah, it'd be like a test.
Totally. And who knows, maybe I'd learn something new along the way, right?
Right. But I still keep coming back to this idea, what if these markets become, too powerful?
Oh, yeah, I've thought about that too.
Like they start dictating which research gets funded and which areas get ignored because they're seen as, less likely to succeed.
That's the scary part.
Yeah, it's a bit like all the debates about AI, right?
Totally.
So much potential for good, but we got to be so careful about unintended consequences.
Right, exactly.
We need to think really hard about how these markets get set up and regulated, to make sure they're actually helping science, not hurting it.
Couldn't agree more.
It's almost like we're at a crossroads
It feels that way.
with this crazy, powerful new tool.
Yeah,
And we got to figure out how to use it responsibly.
me too.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
This research is a total game changer.
Oh, yeah.
It's forcing us to rethink, the very foundations of how science works.
Totally.
It's a little scary, but also super exciting.
I know, right? It reminds us that science is always changing, always evolving.
Yeah.
It's not set in stone.
Full of surprises, unexpected twists and turns.
Exactly, and that's what makes this deep dive so cool, right?
Finally, we get to explore these crazy new ideas,
Yeah.
grapple with these huge questions.
And hopefully, come out the other side a bit smarter.
A bit wiser, a bit more curious.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive into prediction markets and the future of science.
It's been a wild ride.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought.
Okay, shoot.
If we really do get good at predicting scientific outcomes,
Yeah.
what happens to scientists?
Interesting.
Do they become more like analysts,
Yeah.
just interpreting the predictions these markets spit out?
Right.
Or will their role change in ways we can't even imagine yet?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yep.
But one thing's for sure, the future of science is full of surprises.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait to see what happens next.
Me neither.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into the world of prediction markets and the future of science. Until next time, keep those minds curious and stay thirsty for knowledge.